So, what I would like to talk to you here about today is the intensification of attacks on pro Palestine campus speech since October 7th, with an emphasis on the involvement of legacy Jewish communal institutions in these attacks. And I say intensify because these attacks are certainly not a new phenomenon, but rather one that has been occurring for years. So, academic freedom and freedom of expression have been stifled by the creation of a chilly climate of intimidation and coerced silence taking place in an environment shaped by a Western dogma of compulsory Zionism. In a 2022 report issued by Independent Jewish Voices, of which I'm a co author, entitled Unveiling the Chilly Climate The Suppression of Speech on Palestine in Canada, for which we interviewed 40 faculty members, 23 students from 21 universities in 7 provinces. We found substantial evidence of political intervention into hiring, restrictions on academic freedom, self-censorship in relation to Palestine, fear about the potential impact of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism, harassment by pro-Israel advocacy groups and media outlets, attacks from academic colleagues, the centrality of ethnic, racial, and religious identity in the experience of harassment, the emotional impact of self-censorship, harassment, and suppression of speech, political interference by university administration, classroom and social media surveillance, sexist and homophobic slurs, anti-Palestinian and anti-Arab racism, and Islamophobia. So while the struggle for academic freedom here is critical, what we need to foreground at this moment is the unbearable and unforgivable destruction of the means of knowledge production, preservation, and dissemination in Gaza. Not one university in Gaza remains standing. Over 240 faculty and educators and 4,800 students have been killed in Israeli bombings. 90,000 students in Gaza can no longer attend university. There has been total destruction of countless archives, libraries, museums, and other repositories of Palestinian culture and knowledge. There is no academic freedom in Gaza because there is no longer an academia in Gaza. This is part and parcel of genocide. Suppression of speech on Palestine in Western academia is part of a well-coordinated apparatus aimed at discrediting and silencing oppositional voices, and in the last 4 months to justifying a genocidal war on Palestine. Accusations of anti-Semitism appear to be the major strategy used to silence and intimidate academics and activists who advocate for Palestinian human rights. Allegations of Jew hatred directed at supporters of justice for Palestine constitute a strategy conceptualized by the Israeli government in partnership with Jewish communal leaderships, national and international Jewish organizations, pro-Israel advocacy groups, institutional arms of the Israeli government, and academics and researchers promoting the idea of a new anti-Semitism in which they claim Israel is demonized as quote unquote the Jew among nations. University of Pennsylvania political scientist Ian Lustig has argued that the pro-Israel lobby constitutes a vigilante force, which has made it increasingly difficult to criticize Israel without fear of lawsuits, accusations of anti-Semitism, demands for political balance and staging of events, blacklisting of participants, or other forms of personal or institutional harassment. Mainstream or legacy Jewish organizations in Canada have been very active in defaming and pursuing penalties against pro-Palestinian organizations and individuals on Canadian campuses. Documentation on this can be found in the Chilly Climate Report. Many of these groups receive financial support from the main funding arm of the Jewish community, the United Jewish Appeal. These include Hillel, B'nai B'rith, Friends of the Simon Wiesenthal Center, and the Canadian Institute for the Studies on Anti-Semitism. Hasbara Fellowships Canada trains and provides $3,000 stipends to students to defend Israel on campus. The Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, CIJA, Canada's main Israel and Jewish advocacy group, offers grants for organizations that, quote, reduce the efficacy of anti-Israel activity on Canadian university campuses. The Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center has initiated a campus advocacy fellowship. Those selected are trained to, quote, confront insidious forms of anti-Semitism, including anti-Zionism, BDS, Israel Apartheid Week, and other initiatives that promote myths and libels about Jews, end quote. Since October 7th, multi-million-dollar class action lawsuits have been filed on behalf of anonymous Jewish students against UBC, York, Queens, Concordia, McMaster, where the ask is $77 million, and Toronto Metropolitan University by discredited law firm Diamond and Diamond, in which it is claimed that universities have failed to protect Jewish students from anti-Semitism. Accusations of anti-Semitism, often against racialized medical faculty, have raged in Canadian academic medicine institutions. And Michaela, I'm sure, is going to talk about that. The examples of this dynamic in other sectors are too numerous to mention here. It must be noted that Jewish students and faculty's expression of fear in the face of pro-Palestine campus advocacy have been used to advocate for a crackdown on campus Palestine solidarity groups. It's much more intense in the United States, often with insufficient evidence of actual cases of assault or intimidation. How do we make sense of this anticipatory fear when it is a response to calls for a ceasefire or to the display of a Palestinian flag? And do these expressions of fear divert our attention from actual manifestations of anti-Jewish animus? As Sarah Ahmed notes, the question of fear is shown to be structural and mediated rather than an immediate bodily response to an objective danger. Fear is a response to the threat of violence, but perceptions of threat are shaped by the prevailing narratives of what is and what is not threatening, and about who are and who are not the appropriate objects of fear. So often it is anti-Palestinian racism and Islamophobic sentiment that shapes these affective responses. The damage that has been inflicted for years on those advocating for Palestine never enters the conversation. As David Cleon noted in a recent article in the New York Review of Books, Jews joining the pro-Palestine demonstrations are not the Jews whose feelings matter. Where does all this leave dissenting Jews? As Cleon writes, Jewishness provides the apartness and critical detachment that draws to progressive politics and to lives of intellectual and moral inquiry. In this sense, the Jewish left's estrangement from mainstream Jewish institutions has been a source of renewal as well as trauma. By taking a lonely moral stand, in many cases risking real loss as a result, we are learning precisely what it means to be Jewish. Thanks.